Atlas has been holding up the sky for 3,000 years, and almost got tricked out of ever putting it down by the one hero clever enough to out-scheme him. This is the story of the Titan condemned to bear the heaviest punishment in the pantheon, the myth-busting truth about what he's actually holding up, and the single moment his own cleverness almost worked before it didn't. Atlas was a Titan, son of Iapetus, brother to Prometheus, Epimetheus, and Menœides. 4 brothers, 4 completely different fates. Unlike Prometheus, who sided with Zeus in the war we covered in our last episode, Atlas fought against the Olympians and in several ancient sources led the Titan armies directly against Zeus himself. Menœides, another of the 4, fared even worse than Atlas. Hesiod describes Zeus striking him down with a thunderbolt for his violence and overreaching pride, hurling him into Erebus, the primordial darkness, never to be heard from again in any surviving myth. When the Titanomachy finally ended in the Titans' defeat, most of them were cast into Tartarus alongside Kronos. Atlas received a different sentence entirely, one that wouldn't lock him away in darkness like his brother, but would last far longer than any prison ever could. Zeus condemned Atlas to stand at the western edge of the world and hold up the heavens themselves for eternity. Here's a detail that gets flattened in most modern retellings. Atlas doesn't hold up the earth. He holds up the sky. Ouranos, the celestial dome the ancient Greeks believed separated the heavens from the world below, physically preventing it from collapsing back down onto everything beneath it. The image of Atlas straining beneath a globe of the earth is a much later artistic convention popularized centuries after Hesiod, not the original myth. Though it's become so common in statues, book covers, and popular culture that it's essentially replaced the real story in the popular imagination. Even his name may reflect the sentence itself. Many scholars trace Atlas back to a Greek root meaning to endure or to suffer, suggesting the punishment and the name were bound together from the very start, rather than the name simply being applied to him afterward. Ancient sources are specific about where this sentence took place too. The far western edge of the known world, a boundary point so remote that for centuries it doubled in the Greek imagination as the literal edge of the map. Despite his eternal burden, Atlas fathered numerous children with the Oceanid nymph Pleione and others, the Pleiades, the Hyades, and the Hesperides among them. The 7 Pleiades later became the star cluster that still bears their name, transformed in most tellings after years spent fleeing the hunter Orion's pursuit, placed in the sky partly for their own protection. The Hyades met a similarly bittersweet fate, turned into the star cluster ancient farmers used to predict the rainy season, their name derived from the Greek word for rain. One of Atlas's other daughters, Maia, went on to have a son of her own with Zeus, Hermes, the trickster messenger god who'll get his own episode on this channel later on. Which means the same Titan condemned to bear the weight of the sky forever is also, quite literally, Hermes' grandfather, connecting one of the most punished figures in this pantheon directly to one of its most light-hearted. Atlas's daughters, the Hesperides, were tasked with guarding a legendary garden at the western edge of the world, home to a tree that grew golden apples, a wedding gift from Gaia to Hera, said to grant immortality or eternal youth to whoever possessed them. The nymphs didn't guard the tree alone. Most ancient sources also place a massive serpent named Ladon coiled around its trunk, a second layer of defense for a prize valuable enough that even gods coveted it. That garden's exact location, conveniently, was somewhere only Atlas himself reliably knew, positioned as he was at the very edge of the world, holding up the sky directly above it. That knowledge became crucial during Heracles' 11th labor, second to last of the 12. Retrieve the golden apples of the Hesperides. Ancient sources suggest Heracles had been warned, by an oracle or by Prometheus himself in some versions, that no mortal could take the apples directly. Only Atlas, their guardian's own father, could retrieve them without provoking the garden's defenses. Rather than risk facing Ladon and the nymphs himself, Heracles made Atlas an offer, He would hold the sky in Atlas's place temporarily if Atlas would fetch the apples on his behalf. Atlas agreed, relieved beyond words for even a brief reprieve from a burden he'd carried for generations, and returned successfully with the apples in hand. Then he made his own offer. He would deliver the apples to King Eurystheus himself, leaving Heracles to hold the sky permanently in his place. Before the moment Atlas almost pulled it off, take a second to like and subscribe. It really helps a channel this size. Heracles, recognizing the trap for exactly what it was, agreed readily, but asked for one small favor first. Could Atlas take the sky back just for a moment so Heracles could adjust the padding on his shoulders for comfort? Atlas, seeing no harm in such a brief request, took the sky back onto his own shoulders. Heracles immediately picked up the apples and walked away, leaving Atlas exactly where he'd started, except now painfully aware that even a Titan's cunning couldn't outmaneuver a hero determined enough to see through it. It's one of the earliest surviving versions of a trick storytellers have been reusing ever since. Get someone to voluntarily hand back the very burden they were just relieved of, using nothing but a polite, reasonable-sounding request. Atlas's story connects to one more myth this channel will eventually tell in full. According to the poet Ovid, the hero Perseus, exhausted and searching for shelter after defeating Medusa and rescuing Andromeda, approached Atlas asking for hospitality. Atlas, fearing an old prophecy that a son of Zeus would one day steal his golden apples, refused and tried to force Perseus away by force, an anxiety that reads differently once you know Heracles, also a son of Zeus, had already taken those exact apples by the time most versions of this story are told. Perseus, insulted and unwilling to fight a Titan directly, instead showed him Medusa's severed head. Atlas turned to stone instantly, his massive form becoming the literal mountain range that still bears his name today, stretching across northwestern Africa through what's now Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, meaning the god cursed to hold up the sky forever eventually did so not as a punished Titan straining under the weight, but as solid rock, unmoving by necessity rather than sentence. Much of what we know about Atlas comes from Hesiod's Theogony, which establishes his punishment and his family, and later, Ovid's Metamorphoses, which provides the detailed account of his transformation to stone. His name and image have carried directly into modern language in ways that outlasted the myth itself. Books of maps are called atlases, specifically because the 16th century cartographer Gerardus Mercator used an image of the Titan holding the globe on the cover of his own map collection, cementing the popular earth-bearing misconception permanently into common use centuries after Hesiod ever wrote a word about him. Even human anatomy carries his name. The topmost vertebra in your spine, the one that supports the full weight of your skull and lets you nod your head, is called the atlas bone, a small daily reminder of a Titan most people can't place in any specific myth. One of the oldest surviving depictions of him, a Roman marble copy known as the Farnese Atlas, shows him kneeling under a carved celestial globe rather than a map of the earth, meaning even a statue built centuries before Mercator's map books already had the sky not earth detail correct, long before popular culture quietly swapped it out. Atlas's legacy is one of literal, unending weight, punished not for personal cruelty like Kronos, and not for a single act of defiance like Prometheus, but simply for choosing the losing side of a war 3 generations of gods had already been fighting before he was born. Compare his fate to his own brothers. Menoetius vanished into Erebus in a single thunderbolt strike, gone from the myth entirely, while Atlas's punishment stretched on visibly, permanently, for as long as anyone kept telling the story. He was nearly freed by his own cleverness, outsmarted by an even cleverer hero, and finally, almost accidentally, achieved a strange kind of permanence by turning to literal stone. Between Kronos' fear, Prometheus' defiance, and Atlas's burden, the Titans collectively tell a very different story than the Olympians who replaced them. Not gods who ruled through triumph, but figures who paid in wildly different ways for a war none of them could have known they'd eventually lose. That's it for now on the Titans. More of their stories and more of the gods who came after them are still ahead. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next.